Hey everyone, welcome to Trans Talk. I think it's episode 8 or 9 officially, but it feels like episode 1 because I am actually in a podcast studio. It's not completely done yet, but um, it is a vast improvement over what I was doing before, which was putting my phone on the bed and lying down and just talking while halfway falling asleep. So this is a new leaf for me. Um, I'm a little nervous about this because there is equipment, there are cameras. It is very weird for me to be trying. I think that in terms of comedy in my career, the only thing I've really tried is to have good content, but I've never really tried with anything else. So I'm trying to try now with all the rest of the things I'm supposed to be doing, turning over a new leaf. This is all being put together by my friend Christina, who is off camera trying to operate this whole thing. She told me that I can tell her to leave if I want, but I don't know. I don't know if I want her to leave or if I want her to stay and be my emotional support. Anyway, look, guys, it's been a crazy, I don't know, 2 months, and I've been kind of like I share a lot about myself on social media, and maybe I share a little too much. Maybe I should save some of it for the stage. Maybe I should save it for the podcast. But I do feel like everything is kind of everything now. So, um, in case you guys were wondering the updates on my life right now, I am having a lot of self discoveries. And the main one I have figured out in the past few days, um, it is a truth that I think a lot of people who've known me for a long time know. I'm a pretty transparent person. That's not a trans joke. It's just I'm very transparent. I always think that I'm so complicated and so deep, but everyone can read me pretty well um, because I think I'm so clever. I think I can I'm fooling everyone and all this other stuff, but people can read me pretty clearly. And this revelation I had of myself is something people have known for years now, which is that I am a very ambitious person. Apparently, I am the last person to know this. My therapist, my male therapist, about a decade ago, the only male therapist I will ever have because he's only given me 3 or 4 pieces of good advice. And one of them is that he told me that I was low key ambitious. And I did not know what he meant because I spent most of my life lying down in bed, depressed. And what he was saying is that I was ambitious because if I weren't ambitious, I would not even be doing any stand up comedy to begin with. I would never do a roast battle. This guy found my roast battles and he became a huge fan of mine. Um, and that's not actually as cool as it sounds when your therapist just becomes like a huge fan of your comedy, like your actual stand up comedy and your roast battles, because the sessions just kind of became about how he like, so what, when's your next show? It was flattering, but it wasn't exactly a great therapist, right? But when he said this, it stuck with me, but it didn't stick to me as really true. So, um, I when I tell people I blew up my whole life, it's always like I'm always trying to like tell people I blew up my whole life without giving too many of the specific details, just because I'm trying to respect everyone's privacy. So I'm always trying to put it from my own perspective and what I've discovered about myself. And yeah, I think what happened honestly is that my ambition was just screaming to leave my body for a really long time now, because there are specific moments that I remember in my life where I was with somebody, with maybe a group of friends, maybe I think it started off like even early as like post college, and I'd be with my childhood friends, and we'd all be sitting around playing video games until like 6 in the morning, and there was a part of me that kept thinking like, you should be doing something else with your life right now. I don't know what it is, but you should be doing something else. This doesn't feel fulfilling. And I remember thinking like, I just won the talent show in high school like 2 years ago for doing stand up comedy. I should be doing some kind of entertainment, some kind of something, right? And so, during the next few years, I would always do things where like I'm trying to be public in some way. It actually started in high school when I really look back on like how important I really think my voice really is. There's a cognitive dissonance where I'm like acting like my voice doesn't matter, and then my actions would show that I do feel like my voice matters, and then I get insecure about that and I shut it down. in high school, there were things called like a Zanga or a Live Journal, right? These were like little online journals, and I remember I used Zanga um, as like this public diary, and I didn't have that many subscribers, but I did have like a few subscribers from high school, and it was a divisive thing I was doing because it was kind of, as a guy, quote unquote, a guy sharing about my feelings so publicly. Um, a lot of people found it off-putting, but I also found out that low key people found it to be very refreshing. That Robert Tran is very emotionally open about his emotions, but that was kind of an example of me trying to put my voice out there. Like there was something inside of me even when I was young, like very young, writing stories when I was a little kid that I kind of felt like, and I can say this now because I've actually had some credibility and some resume, that my voice was super important. There was just something about me that felt like I am I'm smarter than most people. I'm just gonna say whatever, who gives a shit, right? I felt like I was smarter than most people, I was deeper than most people, I was more emotionally in tune than most people. I hung out with my teachers more than the students, but I also was failing my classes, so I was a teacher's pet who was also failing all my classes because I was hanging out with my teachers, but I also thought school was stupid and it was limiting in its education. And my teachers would even agree with me after school. Like, yeah, school is very limiting. And like they would tell me that I felt it was like I was like an old soul. And it wasn't predatory because I hadn't come out as a girl yet. So like a little boy being an old soul doesn't have like the weird connotations that it would a girl would have. But what I really think about it, I've always felt like my voice matters. I'm so important, and if I can just get an audience to hear what I have to say, then I would blow up. That's kind of what my I was thinking. So in 2000 and I believe 2010, maybe 2009, I was like in a dead end office job, right? So I would be sitting in this office. It was a debt settlement company, which I think is illegal. Real quick about this company is that it was one of those companies where like all of us, all these employees were like, if the FBI came knocking on the door one day and said, get the fuck out, we would not be surprised. It was one of those companies, but I needed to make money. And uh, I was just so depressed at this job, I was so depressed. It was my first office job. So at first I was like, ooh, I'm making $12 an hour. That's double digits. That's better than $6 an hour. Like I felt like I was a millionaire making $12 an hour. So I didn't want to leave this dream job of $12 an hour. But I felt like I want to do something more. I want to express myself. So I actually started doing what I was doing with Trans Talk. Actually, I started putting my phone on the table, and I started just kind of talking into my phone for a while. And I started a podcast called like Hello World Infinity, because I think I was writing stories a lot online called like Hello World Part 1, Hello World Part 2, like writing these little short stories. And I started this podcast, Hello World Infinity. Um, and I think I did about 3 episodes. And the only person who listened to this podcast was a girl I had a crush on at work. So it was like, I'm basically just talking to one person now, But I was like, God, how do I get people to fucking listen to this thing, So I think what I'm trying to say is that my ambition, or maybe not like ambition, but like my, I don't know, my like the knowledge I had that I my voice is important or whatever, the confidence in that was very early on. And so yeah, so when I started doing stand up comedy, I I was very nervous the first time. I like threw up before the open mic. Actually, I threw up before every open mic for like the first 2 years I was doing stand up. I was so nervous about every open mic. But part of me was like, if you can get over this fear, you can be one of the greatest comedians of all time. Like I felt this before, like before my first open mic. I'm like, people just need to hear you. Once people see you, you are a star. I don't know how, I don't know why you're a star, but you're a star. You just are. There was something innate in me, despite all of evidence, despite the things I would say about myself, even the fact I suck and I hate myself, I want to kill myself. And then there was this other part of me that kind of was like kind of combating that with, but you're really fucking funny and entertaining. You just need to figure that out. You just need to like, you know what I always felt like? I always felt like when it came to like small groups or big groups, or like, you know, if I'm at a party or whatever, I always felt like a little out of place. Um, but I felt like if I was by myself in front of a lot of people, I can control the elements and people would be forced to listen to me. And once they were forced to listen to me, they'd be like, I like what I'm hearing, you know? Um, the thing about stand up comedy or a podcast is that you don't have to fight for the attention. You can just get the attention right off the bat. And, you know, like I'd be at a party, be a lot of tall white guys, very confidently being very funny to each other. And then I couldn't be funny because I was a short little Asian, you know? I had to, like, I didn't know how to, like, make my voice louder than these white guys. But I was like, I kept thinking to myself, but if you can just, like, if you can just have the attention to you and they would have to listen, you would show that you're funnier than everyone in this room. I just had this feeling, you know, this feeling, whatever the fuck this feeling is. Um, I had this really delusional, this very delusional thought. Um, this is actually delusional, so I'll share some actual delusion with you. Um, I was in I was in this class in college where the teacher said something about how the number one cause of death in like some third world country is dysentery, and I said that's a shitty way to die, and I got a giant laugh in the class, and I thought to myself, if I can just be on HBO, and I said that one specific joke, I would go viral. Millions of people would like. It was like, wow, that is the greatest joke we've ever heard in our lives, and I would make $1 million. That's like literally what I thought. So again, see that is the level of, I don't know, arrogance I have in my own voice or whatever. But yeah, it's always been this warring thing against myself, you know. This, and people who know me in my everyday life have expressed this kind of weird, like, swinging back and forth between like suicidally depressed and hating myself and like thinking that I'm the greatest comedian in the entire world, and I swing back and forth between those two things. And I'm trying to figure out like a little balance between them because like they're both way too extreme, you know. Um, but yeah, when I was starting to do stand up comedy, and I started getting like, when I started getting really good, getting good, I was good right away. I mean, most people fucking struggle the first, like, I didn't have that struggle. I was good. I was good right away. You know, people were like, you know, the first 2 or 3 years when you bomb, I'm like, I had never have experienced that. The first time I bombed was like I was 3 months into comedy, and I bombed, and I was like, "Oh, is this what you guys have all been experiencing this whole time? Because this doesn't feel good." And everyone just hated my guts so much. And I was good at it right away, and then I started feeling this entitlement. Actually, I started feeling like I should be bigger than I am. Right? I started feeling like fuck everything, and I should be bigger than I am. Um, and it felt like I was kind of just, oh, banging my head against the wall. Like, what am I doing? Um, and then, you know, while I was doing stand up comedy, I met the person who would become my partner of 13 years. You know, we were both doing stand up comedy together. We met doing comedy, and they were a huge fan of my comedy, and I really thought they were brilliant. Um, and I think what happened, if I'm to be really honest, I don't know if I'm keeping this part into the podcast because this is going to get a little personal, but um, the first time we hung out, where I spent the night, um, the next day we ordered Chinese food and we watched. This is very embarrassing. Dane Cook's Torgasm on DVD. Very embarrassing. We watched this together, and I felt a sense of safety that I had never felt before in my entire life. And I feel like a lot of my life began, like I began like seeking that level of safety, you know, of being inside, feeling safe, feeling like my nervous system for the first time maybe in my whole life at that moment had calmed down. Like I felt like I don't know. I felt like I was safe, and I felt like I never wanted to leave that safety, And so I started choosing that over the stand up part, And what's so tragic about this is that my ex partner, they were the ones that were like pushing me to keep doing the stand up, Like the reason why they fell in love with me was because I was, let's face it, the most brilliant stand up comedian in the entire world, right? I mean, let's face it. Like who fucking wouldn't fall for me, right? Um but I just kept chasing the safety. And I think when I look back on this, I don't think I've ever talked about this out loud or in public. I think I did everything I could for the next 13 years to tamper down that ambition as much as I possibly could because I did not want to let go of that fantasy of recapturing that feeling of safety I felt eating Chinese food and watching Torgasm by Dane. Can you believe that? That was my that was my North Star. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what I think I've been kind of dealing with for a long time. I got really addicted to marijuana for a decade. I was smoking like 10 to 12 bowls a day for like a decade. I only stopped maybe a year or two ago. Um, and I did it with the purpose of ruining my ambition. That's why I even remember telling people this. Like, I would be around the house and I would get really bored. And instead of dealing with the boredom and maybe, sometimes boredom is something like you kind of need boredom so that your mind can kind of figure out what you want to do, right? Like a lot of creative ideas come from boredom. Like boredom is actually good for you if you know how to handle it. But I didn't want to deal with the boredom. Whenever I felt bored, I would feel very anxious. So what do? I would smoke a lot of weed. Right? So now I now have a guilt-free way of having no ambition whatsoever. So that was one of my first coping mechanisms was just to just kind of to numb it as much as I possibly could. And there were days I actually remember there were like two specific days when I realized I really had a problem, like a real problem. And one of them was like um, we were gonna go to TJ Maxx, me and my partner. We got like $100 gift card from their aunt, right? And we wanted to use this $100 gift card, but then we got this giant bag of weed. And instead of going to TJ Maxx, I remember just smoking a bunch of weed, and we never went to TJ Maxx. Like that's how like hard it was to leave the house. That we couldn't even go to TJ Maxx because we were getting so fucking high, right? Mostly me, I think. I think I was getting so high. The other time was another marijuana incident, which is um, we I got like a message on Facebook or like somebody posted on Facebook. It's the Last Tickles comedy room show, guys. Please come down, right? And Tickles Comedy Room was an open mic in Orange County that was in the back of a sober living home. Like, it's like a former crackhead had this open mic. It was the craziest open mic. It was like literally the garage of a sober living home. And it was kind of dangerous to get there. Like you had to literally go through an alley. And it was a little garage, and Johnny was the host, and Johnny had no concept of time, and he was the host. So sometimes he would go on stage and he would do like 18 minutes of just like, "Hey everyone, yeah." I'm doing an offensive voice, but it's literally how he sounds. "Hey, what are you doing?" And he would just. One time, Johnny actually told me he has like, "Hey Robert, you're here. Can you host for a little bit?" I'm like, "Why?" He goes like, just need to go to the grocery store real quick. I'll be right back." I'm like, "Okay." So Johnny leaves to go to the grocery store in the middle of hosting this open mic, and now I am hosting this open mic for like 45 minutes. I'm like, "Where is Johnny? Johnny is fucking gone." But this room was very special to a lot of us because you can just do because Johnny didn't have any concept of time. So sometimes you'd be on stage and he would leave the room and forget that there was an open mic going on. So you would do like 23 minutes at an open mic, right? So that kind of this open mic was insane and it was depressing, but you kind of became like a great comedian, and it became the kind of like this legendary room in Orange County because of how absurd it is. Anyway, so someone posts it's the last tickles. Everyone come down. And people were tagging me, and I couldn't go because I was high. And I remember being very sad about that. Ironically, what I was doing at home instead of going to Tickles was I was watching the Saved by the Bell episode when Johnny, with Johnny Dakota or whatever his name was, came down to the school to do an anti-drug ad, and this anti-drug ad was like, it turns out that Johnny was actually smoking weed, and it's like, oh, what a hypocrite, right? I was watching an anti-drug episode of Saved by the Bell instead of going to Tickles, and remember thinking like, I think this is a problem that I'm having, but then I kind of justified it to myself like, oh, Tickles is not even that big of a deal. There's only probably like 7 or 8 people there. But if I'm really being honest with myself, that was one of the days I realized I have a real fucking problem. And I thought it was just like a marijuana addiction. And it was, but it was deeper than that. It was an avoidance mechanism, a distraction from I should have been there. I should have been at that crackheads open mic. I mean that was my calling. But when I look back at those kinds of incidents, I remember just really, really being honest with myself. And the reason I couldn't do a lot of shows for a while was because if the show started at 8, I could not wait until after 8 o'clock to start smoking weed. So I would start smoking weed at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Like for me, it was like you're not addicted if you wait till it's PM to smoke. So if you smoke at 12 PM, it's not AM anymore. Um, but that's what I did for a long time was distract myself with marijuana. And again, it was like just anything I could do to not actually live up to the potential that I'm, you know. Anyway, so I think what really happened was when I got medicated for my bipolar at the end of 2019, that was when the ambitious side really started coming out. I stopped isolating as much. I mean, I still wanted to be at home. I still like love being at home, but I wanted to be out more, Like still kind of introverted but still kind of out. Um and I remember during these 3 weeks that I first got medicated, I did 21 open mics in 3 weeks in Los Angeles. 21 open mics. It actually made my comedy a lot worse cuz LA open mics are just terrible places to be. But I became obsessed with kind of just being out there doing more comedy. Um, and that was my ambitious side starting to finally come out. But it turns out I was manic during this time, so we had to readjust my medications and everything. But I think that was the first glimpse of it, of like Robin Tran is kind of ambitious. Robin Tran wants to do more, wants to be more. And I think as the years went on, and I think it was 2021. I think was when it all really kind of changed for me. Was it 20? I think it was 2021. Might have been 2022. It was like when the vaccines came out. That was when everything changed for me. Was I had a I took a year and a half off of doing any stand up because I like loved lockdown so much. I fucking loved it. I like love being inside. I was the only person I think in America that enjoyed it. like but so, we get the vaccines come out, and I get a phone call from my managers, and they tell me that, okay, well, Just for Laughs wants to audition you because they still like you from last time. Are you free to perform in 13 days? And I was like, fuck, damn it, I'm free. Like that's when the vaccines come out, and I remember looking outside my window, realizing that my sanctuary of lockdown was essentially over, and I felt so depressed that I had to go out again and do stuff again, and I had not done any stand up for a year and a half, nothing. And I got to Just for Laughs, and that year Just for Laughs was not in Montreal, it was in Los Angeles actually. The reason why my ex and I moved to Los Angeles to begin with was because I had a Just for Laughs audition years ago, and it was so far away from Orange County where we lived that I kind of bombed because it took 3 hours to get to Los Angeles, right? So the original intention of moving to Los Angeles was for maybe one day I would get on Just for Laughs, and now it's all happening. And Just for Laughs, that year was not in Montreal; it was in Los Angeles, about 10 minutes away from where we live. So it was this full circle moment, right? And I remember an intense moment of self sabotage I had was I was going to go online and I was going to post that I got into Just for Laughs, and then I was going to protest the event by claiming how immoral it is that they are holding a comedy show during COVID. And then I was going to get a lot of likes on Twitter by calling out Just for Laughs, by saying, this is wrong, and I'm going to make. And I thought about how like how much integrity I had and how many people would like my posts and everything. And that was one of the few times when my ex literally went, "Don't do that. What are you doing? Why would you do that?" And I was like, I don't like, I didn't want to do the audition for some reason. There was something that was keeping me from doing the audition. And I would tell people like, oh God, I hate these gatekeepers. I hate Just for Laughs. I hate these. Why do they have all the say? And like, why are people making me go out during this pandemic and all this stuff, right? And I was trying to downplay the whole thing. And I remember one of my friends, her name is Tess. I was telling her all this stuff, and she's the only one that asked me this question that kind of haunted me. She goes, "Are you excited?" And that was when I was like, "Yeah, I think I am. I think that's all this is. I think I'm really excited." And then all of my coping mechanisms that I used to use, which was "you're gonna fail, no one likes you," all this stuff, right? I was like, "Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that you're gonna fail? Do you really believe you're gonna bomb? Especially now that you're medicated. Especially like when you were depressed, you killed when you were depressed. What are the chances that you're gonna bomb when you're not depressed anymore? When you can actually be present with people?" And then that's when I kind of had this realization that the thing I'm really nervous about was that I knew I was gonna kill, and that was the first time I had that feeling in my life. Was I knew I was gonna kill, and the day came of the audition. I I went on stage. No stand up comedy for a year and a half. Everyone in the green room, by the way, had been doing comedy during the lockdown. They like went to Texas and they did all these fucking shows. I'm like, you guys are insane. Like that's crazy. You guys all did that. And by the way, they all did worse than I did. So I don't think that helped. They risked their lives to be worse than someone who didn't even want to be there. Which I think, right, another instance of genius right before you. But anyway, I came out and I did my first joke, and I remember that there was a weird moment because I think that this was the audience's first show that they've seen for a while, and it was my first time doing comedy for a while. And I remember doing my first joke, and then the audience laughed, and then it was like we both kind of felt awkward that this was happening. It was almost like, isn't this a weird job that I have? The audience laughed, like the audience even felt like this is an awkward first date. I guess that was just a little thing I remember, but like I remember halfway through my set, I just kind of giggled and I went, "I'm like really good at this." Like I couldn't even stand it out loud. I'm like, "I'm so good at this," and I killed the audition. I made it to the next round. Um, I made, I killed it at Just for Laughs. The one in Los Angeles instead of Montreal. Um, that was the year where the green room was an alley next to a dumpster. This was the glamorous Just for Laughs festival. But I did Just for Laughs and I killed so hard that the next day I got fucking phone calls from like the CW network and from all these different comedy clubs. I got like represented by like these really big powerful agents, and then I got an audition for SNL. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I was almost an SNL cast member in 2022. Like I was this close. When I say I was almost an SNL cast member, I mean I was in the room with people who ended up getting a little cat coming in. Little kitties coming in. Um, I was the cat wants to hear my SNL story. Is the cat gonna go into frame? Oh, so cute. You can talk, Christina, if you want. You want to come on camera? Is this? Oh no, nope. She jumped off. Is this SNL story boring? Is that what happened? You get the cat in? No, it is. It is not. I came very close, but I was in the same room with everyone that got it. Um, but that was kind of the year when everything kind of like started blowing up for me. And I remember when I got on like the Netflix David Letterman thing, and I remember like looking out the window after I got the Netflix David Letterman thing, and I started mourning my old life. That's what I did. I started thinking about how after I got on this Netflix thing, I'm gonna leave the house and I'm gonna be bombarded by fans nonstop. Everyone in the apartment complex is gonna oh my god, you're Robin Tran from Netflix. I had this kind of um this entire fantasy of what was going to happen, and then none of it happened. And then I was kind of relieved that my old life was remaining. Um, but I was also embarrassed that I thought things were going to be bigger, and that was kind of like more evidence of my different parts of me warring at myself. This cat is just going all over the place in this. But anyway, I think the more time went on and the more I was kind of doing like less comedy, like I got dropped by those agents like maybe in 2023, and so my gigs really dried up, you know, for like the next couple of years. And I was never proactive. I never learned how to make money. I never learned how to contact bookers and do my own shows. And the fewer shows I did, the more complacent I got. Because I wasn't forced to fly to Texas and do the Moon Tower Comedy Festival. I wasn't forced to do any of this stuff. So then my body started going, well, you know what? Staying home is like, it's not fulfilling, but it feels kind of safe. It feels really safe. And since things are drying up anyway, just like be at home as much as you possibly can. I didn't consciously do this. It was more like this feeling I got of this is a great opportunity to really, discover myself. And all of it was just like justification of not putting myself out there anymore because I lost a muscle. I built a muscle when I was booked to do so many things, and I was just doing it. I was building momentum, and it stopped. And then I just spent the next, I don't know, 2 years avoiding doing the thing that would make me snap out of it. Was if I had just done more shows, it would have solved a lot of stuff. If I had just called more people, if I had just done what I know in my heart that I'm supposed to do, then it would have solved a lot of things. But there's something about me that I will do anything except for the thing I'm supposed to do. Like this podcast, for instance, this video podcast that I'm currently doing right now. I think we were supposed to shoot a few hours ago, and I've just been journaling about my feelings and stuff, like just anything to avoid work. I think that's kind of what I'm discovering about myself is the sad reality that what I'm really avoiding is not just my ambition, it's that I just don't want to do the work that live up to that ambition. And I mean the work, the boring work. Christina is off camera, and she's been very persistent about me doing the boring work. She read me very well. She said that when you were younger, you probably charmed your way into getting what you want by charming your way into getting people to do what you want, and that's probably a good skill to have. But past 14, it doesn't really do anything, right? And I think she's right about that. I think that I'm kind of used to charming my way into people giving me what I need, giving me what I want, but that means I didn't build any like real life skills, right? So what I'm really honestly, if I'm saying it out loud, the things that are keeping me from getting what I really want are very easily doable, mundane tasks. The boring stuff, the setting up a Patreon and uploading clips, and monetizing my Instagram or emailing bookers to do my show. Like the little like the data entry type shit you need to do, I'm gonna bring Christina up again. She's off camera. I don't know if she's even enjoying this podcast, but she's like she has a lot of funny analogies. She goes, it's like you have a whole supply of tofu, like a whole, what was it, like a whole warehouse of tofu, and you just need to like put the tofu in a little package, wrap it up, and send it. But you have the tofu, and she was saying it like, oh, you need to just package your stuff and send it out, like it was supposed to be an easy thing. And I just thought, I don't want to package all this fucking tofu. I would rather be sad about something. Like, can I avoid packaging this tofu by distracting myself with bullshit? That's what I do. I distract myself with bullshit, and that's the truth of it. And I hate that when I'm actually doing this, right? Doing this podcast or doing a show or doing a photo shoot from the other day. When I'm actually doing the thing that makes me happy, I don't have time to ruminate about shit that makes me sad. I'm doing the thing that would actually make me happy, but I avoid doing that, because doing this means that I'm going to eventually have to do that boring stuff. And now that I'm saying it out loud, it's actually pretty easy stuff. Like, here's the stuff that I really need to do, right? In practical sense, is number one, I have to do a to-do list, which would take 10 seconds, and then I would have to do the things on my to-do list, which wouldn't take that long anyway, and then I would feel better. But there is such an extreme resistance to opening up my laptop and saying 10 o'clock, do a Patreon. 11 o'clock, email a booker. 12 o'clock, have lunch. Like, it's so hard for me to even do that I stay sad because I think it's easier to be sad about something from your past. Because that's easy. For me, that's easy. I think it's like we kind of go to what feels easier for us, not the healthiest thing, and not what feels the best even, but what is familiar, right? So if you're familiar with chaos, if you're familiar with extreme emotions and drama and all that other shit, then your brain is gonna just naturally go to that because that's what it knows. My brain is still trying to figure out that sitting down and emailing bookers and setting up my website and just the boring shit, my brain is kind of going, I'm fucking bored right now. Start some shit with somebody, and then you won't have to do this stuff. You won't have to do a to-do list. You don't have to set up a Patreon. You don't have to think about your life. You don't have to think about that this is what you want to do and you're good at it and you might get successful and you might actually live up to your potential. That shit is very scary. So just kind of ruminate about this other thing that has no solution. That's what my brain does. I try to solve puzzles that have no solution because it's like a fidget spinner for my brain. And it just goes on and on and on and on fucking forever. And the solution to that is, hey, why don't you get up and go do your podcast? And now I'm doing it. I don't know if this is going to lead anywhere. I hope it does. I think that the thing is though is that, again, right? Everything is like two parts of my brain. One is the how I really feel, and then there's the logic that tries to rein it in. I think that if this podcast comes out, this video podcast where I'm trying and I got my makeup on and this wig on and I release it, that it's gonna be so good that people are gonna go, you need to listen to this. People are gonna get 1 million views in a week. See, that's what the thing about my brain is, that like it's too extreme, like my expectations. And when I don't get 1 million views in like 2 days, I'm like, oh, this is not worth it, So I need to keep that in check. That's another thing I need to keep in check. Something my ex said that is very accurate was, it's like you avoid the work because the reward is too far away from the work that you're doing. And I think that's true, is that I have a huge problem with patience, just having patience for success, like if I send off an email, that doesn't equal $1,000 right away. It might be that it might lead to nothing, and then it's all about the numbers game. And I just think about how much work it's going to take to get anything. But I need to remind myself that in the past few weeks that I have actually put effort into my career. I think I'll just say it out loud to remind myself, is ever since I put up the website with the stand-up coaching stuff, I've gotten some clients. That's like a few $100s, a couple $1,000s, like I have been emailing bookers. A couple of them have gotten back to me. I got a little theater I got on Love It or Leave It. Like, so it's like I'm trying to see it as I'm planting seeds, just planting seeds out there. And this is another seed I'm planting. And I need to keep planting these seeds so that I can, not only so that I can kind of live up to my full potential, but this is also for me on a personal level, like self-soothing, I think, because if I don't do this, then I will just ruminate forever. Like, my ex knew me so well. They said that my brain was like a Jack Russell Terrier. If you don't give it a toy to play with, it's gonna go fucking crazy, So I just hope that I have more toys to play with. I have high hopes for this podcast. I like love the way I look on camera. Like I can't wait to like look back at this and I just like stare at myself. And I also like the way I was going to say and listen to it on mute, but that's I actually like the sound of my voice even more than the way I look on camera, which is kind of crazy that I like love the way I look and sound so much on camera. So hopefully you guys like this. I'm going to try to have guests soon. Margaret Cho said she would do this podcast. I'm going to reach out to more people, do some interviews. I'm very into mistakes right now, and I want to interview people and just ask them like, so what are some mistakes that you made in your life, and what did you learn from them? You know, that's kind of what I want to do. Is there anything else you want me to talk about, Christina?
Just like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, guys. Like and subscribe. It makes a big difference, and please, please like and subscribe. If for nothing else, know how painful it is for me to even say that. For me to ask for something. Like for me to say, please like and subscribe because I need it. Okay. One more thing before I go is, I remember Christina asking me why I have not done any brand deals, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to sell out. I have too much. It's like you have no money right now, and then she suggested like, why don't you just do some brand deals and say Robin Trent sells out? I'm like, okay, I think being kind of homeless kind of makes your integrity less strong, I think. So, like and subscribe. I need you guys. Thank you for listening. Bye. I love you.